On the 5th anniversary of our marriage, my darling gave me a big surprise, a divorce agreement signed with her name. She said, "My mom is gravely ill and doesn't have much time left. Her dying wish is for me to divorce you. I promise it's just a fake divorce. As soon as my mom passes, we'll remarry." Looking at my darling's exhausted face, I softened and agreed. But I never expected that right after the divorce, she would post wedding photos with her first love on social media. Even my supposedly terminally ill mother-in-law was looking perfectly healthy in the group photos. "Sincere, when did you and your darling get divorced?" my friend Charlie asked as he came over to my place. He had barely sat down before dropping the question. Pausing for a moment, he added, "How could you not tell your closest friends about something so major?" I froze. Yes, my darling Victoria and I had divorced, but it was supposed to be a fake divorce. 2 months ago, on our 4th wedding anniversary, Victoria had suddenly handed me a divorce agreement. She explained, "My mom is gravely ill and doesn't have much time left. Her dying wish is for us to divorce." The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew my mom-in-law had never approved of me. She thought I wasn't local enough, not wealthy enough. But after all these years of marriage, how could she still wish for us to separate at the end? Seeing my silence, Victoria took my hand and pleaded, "Sincere, I promise it's just a fake divorce. As soon as my mom passes, we'll remarry." As she spoke, tears streamed down her face like raindrops on a fragile flower. I had always indulged Victoria, to the point where her wishes were my commands. Seeing her cry broke my heart, and I eventually caved. But it was just a fake divorce, not a real one. I never planned to make it public. So how did Charlie even know? I turned to him and asked, "Where did you hear this?" Charlie widened his eyes. His voice filled with disbelief as he exclaimed, "Victoria posted pictures of her marriage license with someone else on social media, and you're asking me where I heard it?" "Sincere. We've been friends for so many years. Something this huge happens and you don't even tell me? How can you act like nothing's wrong?" Charlie kept rambling on, but my mind went completely blank. My heart felt like it was being hammered, blow after blow. My brain buzzed, overwhelmed by one thought. Victoria posted a marriage license. How was this even possible? My hands started trembling uncontrollably, my chest tight with unease and panic. I swallowed hard, trying to mask my emotions. "You must be joking, right?" I said, forcing calmness into my voice. I couldn't believe it. After all, Victoria and I had always had a strong relationship. When she proposed the fake divorce, her sorrowful expression and every little detail of her demeanor replayed vividly in my mind. We had spent 4 years together, and I had always thought our bond was unshakable. How could she suddenly marry someone else? But Charlie's next words shattered the last shred of hope I was clinging to. "I'm not joking, it's the truth. If you don't believe me, call her yourself." As he spoke, Charlie started replying to messages in our old classmates' group chat. He said, "Look, everyone's talking about it." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw messages flooding the group. One classmate asked, "Victoria got married, did I see that right?" Another replied, "Wait, wasn't she already married to Sincere? How can she be getting married again?" Someone speculated, maybe it's an April Fool's joke. They were the golden couple of our class back in the day. Neither graduation nor long distance could tear them apart. How could they be divorced now? Another chimed in, "Yeah, I still remember when we graduated and we all drank together. Sincere even cried and vowed to follow Victoria to her city. He said once they had kids, we'd all reunite." So what happened? I couldn't read any further. My hands fumbled as I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed Victoria's number. "The number you are trying to reach is currently busy," the cold, mechanical voice from the receiver repeated over and over like a sinister mantra. Refusing to give up, I opened our chat history, only to realize that the most recent message was from over a month ago. It was a photo of a meal I had cooked for her. "I made your favorite braised pork belly today," I had written. "When you're back, I'll cook it for you again." That message sat there, lonely and unanswered. As I scrolled further up, my heart grew heavier. Slowly I realized that our chat history had become a one-sided conversation. It was filled with messages I had sent, updates about my day, declarations of love, all left without a response. The realization hit me like a slap in the face. My hands trembled as I typed a message. "Victoria, everyone's saying you got married. What's going on?" After sending the message, it was as if it had disappeared into the void. No response came. That's when I remembered how, for the past month or so, she hadn't replied to my messages. When I called her back then, she had impatiently explained that she was taking care of her mom and couldn't always pick up the phone. She was worried her mom might overhear and grow suspicious. I believed her. During these months, no matter how much I missed her, I refrained from disturbing her. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine she had blocked me, but I refused to give up. I opened my social media feed and discovered that I had been blocked a long time ago. A wave of betrayal washed over me, as if the entire world had turned its back on me. I felt like a fool kept in the dark, a laughingstock in everyone's eyes. Through gritted teeth, I said, "Charlie, send me that photo, please." Each word felt like it was being squeezed out from between my clenched teeth, accompanied by tremors deep in my chest. Every breath was agony, like my ribs were being torn apart. Charlie noticed the pallor of my face and glanced at the blocked feed on my phone. Realizing something was seriously wrong, he wasted no time and sent the photo over. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I struggled to open it. After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to tap on the photo. The man in the picture was none other than Victoria's first love, Blake. My fingers clenched tightly. I vividly remembered Blake at my wedding with Victoria. Dressed in a sharp suit, standing in front of her, he looked more like the groom than I did. Back then, I had asked Victoria if she still had lingering feelings for Blake, questioning why she had invited him to the wedding. Victoria had firmly denied it. She had said, "Sincere, I chose to marry you. How could there be anyone else in my heart? I'm your darling. Don't you trust me even a little?" I believed her. But now the photo showed Victoria and Blake snuggled together, their faces radiating happiness. The vibrant red backdrop, meant to signify celebration, felt like a dagger plunging straight into my chest. My heart tightened as if bound by coarse ropes, every beat sending waves of excruciating pain. I messaged her, "Victoria, answer me. Victoria, say something you wouldn't lie to me, right? What they're saying isn't true, right? You didn't marry someone else." But my messages fell into an abyss, receiving no response, not even a single word. After sending countless messages, I collapsed onto the couch, utterly despondent. My mind was a chaotic mess, teetering on the edge of a breakdown. How could this be? It was supposed to be a fake divorce. Why would Victoria marry someone else? Could it be she was just trying to appease her mother-in-law? The thought flashed through my mind. Suddenly, a glimmer of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe this marriage was fake too. I leapt off the couch, ignoring the messages from my friends, grabbed my car keys and dashed out the door. What should have been an hour-long drive to the hospital took me only 30 minutes. The moment my car screeched to a halt, I stormed into the hospital like a madman, stumbling my way to the inpatient department. "Hello," I said breathlessly. "I'm looking for someone named Olivia." I gave the receptionist Victoria's mother's name. "Could you tell me which room she's in?" The nurse quickly searched through the computer records, glanced up at me, and replied indifferently, "There's no patient named Olivia here. That's impossible." My voice trembled. "She's my mom-in-law. My honey told me she had a terminal illness and has been hospitalized for a long time." I paused, clinging to a shred of hope. "Could you check the discharge records? Maybe she's already been discharged." The nurse frowned slightly. "Anyone who's been admitted here would appear in our system. The person you're asking about hasn't been treated at this hospital. Perhaps you should call to confirm. You might have the wrong place." "No, that can't be." I shook my head in disbelief, staggering back a step. I wouldn't get this wrong. Victoria had mentioned this hospital countless times, even sending me photos of its interior. When I suggested visiting, she firmly rejected the idea, saying her mother was too weak to handle visitors. She had begged me tearfully, "Sincere, just let me stay by my mom's side and accompany her through her final days." During those few short days, Victoria had lost so much weight. her frail appearance breaking my heart. I didn't dare bring up the hospital visit again. Could it be? This was all a meticulously crafted lie. Her mother hadn't been sick at all, nor had she been hospitalized. My mind went blank as I struggled to comprehend the situation. If Victoria truly wanted out of our marriage, why not just say so? I wasn't the kind of man who clung desperately to someone who didn't want him. Why go to such lengths to fabricate an elaborate lie? I stood there frozen for a moment before abruptly turning and striding out of the hospital. I had to find Victoria and get to the bottom of this. I stepped outside, got in my car, and started the engine. But as I turned the steering wheel, my hands suddenly froze. It dawned on me I had no idea where Victoria's family home was. Her mom-in-law had always looked down on me, and from our dating days to our marriage, I had never set foot in their house. Victoria, on the other hand, knew everything about me, my family, my company, my salary, my home. She had reassured me back then, saying, "Marriage is about the two of us. As long as we truly love each other, nothing else matters." But now, her so-called true love was gone, and I couldn't even locate her. With a loud bang, I slammed my fist against the steering wheel. The horn blared piercingly, cutting through the suffocating silence. I lowered my head in defeat, my vision blurring with tears. After what felt like an eternity, I gritted my teeth, pulled myself together, started the car, and drove toward Victoria's workplace. Back when she was still working, I would often pick her up after hours, no matter how exhausted I was. Rain or shine, I was always there. Every time I arrived, her colleagues would say enviously, "Victoria, your husband is such a great guy." Victoria would always smile blissfully. The memories of those sweet moments now felt like sharp knives, twisting painfully in my heart. I arrived just in time for the end of the workday. People were pouring out of the building. As I walked out of the building, I kept my eyes fixed on the exit, but there was still no sign of Victoria. I couldn't hold back anymore. I pushed open the car door, took a few steps to the entrance of the building, and happened to spot a familiar colleague. "Ethan," I called out. Ethan stopped in his tracks when he saw me, looking surprised. "Mr. S., what are you doing here? Where's Victoria?" Without hesitation, I asked, "Victoria?" Ethan paused for a moment before replying, "Victoria? Didn't she take leave?" I pressed on, "When did that happen?" My voice had become hoarse, and my heart was sinking into despair. First, I couldn't reach her through calls. Then, I couldn't find her at the hospital. Now, even the office didn't hold any trace of her. Ethan looked puzzled. "It's been over half a month. She said she was preparing for her wedding." He hesitated and then added, "We were all surprised. You two seemed so close together for so long. We thought you'd been married already." My lips trembled as I forced out a few words. We are married." I couldn't help but think back to when we were planning the wedding. From buying a house, decorating it, picking out her wedding dress, to arranging the ceremony venue, every single detail was handled by me alone. Victoria always said work was too busy, and she couldn't take time off. Even on our wedding day, not a single one of her colleagues showed up. Looking back now, it wasn't about being busy at all. The truth was that I never mattered enough to her for her to make the effort. "Mr. S., what did you say?" Ethan asked, not having caught my words. I didn't respond. Each breath I took felt like ice piercing through me. No wonder she rarely wore her wedding ring, claiming it wasn't convenient for work. Turns out her colleagues didn't even know she was married. Feeling dazed, I turned around and got back into the car, unsure how I even managed to drive away. At that moment, one thought consumed me. I had to find Victoria. Sometimes the more elusive the answer, the more desperate you become to uncover it. I called my company to request some time off, and then drove to every place I thought Victoria might appear. First, the cafe we both loved. Victoria had always been fond of this spot. While I was never a coffee enthusiast, I'd often accompany her since she insisted that every professional needed at least 1 cup a day. She even joked that I'd have to start buying her daily coffee once we were married. Next, I visited her favorite revolving restaurant. Whenever we went there, she'd insist on a window seat, gazing longingly at the city's most luxurious apartment building in the distance. She'd often dream out loud, "Sincere, one day, when we have the money, let's get a place there." Imagine waking up to that view every day. Then I headed to the beach where we once lit fireworks together. By the time I arrived, night had fallen, and someone else was setting off fireworks. The man's eyes were full of adoration as he looked at the woman beside him. The fireworks lit up her face, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw Victoria. I vividly recalled how her face lit up with joy the first time she saw fireworks. She had turned to me, throwing her arms around me, and said, "Sincere, no one's ever been this thoughtful toward me. Being with you makes my life complete." The memories brought tears to my eyes. This city wasn't particularly large, yet it seemed like every corner was imprinted with fragments of our shared past. For the next 3 days, I searched for Victoria like a man possessed. I went to every place I could think of, but there was no trace of her. Exhaustion eventually caught up with me after days without rest. Finally, I collapsed outside the entrance of a small movie theater we used to frequent. A kind bystander called 911, and I was rushed to the hospital. The sharp smell of disinfectant greeted me as I slowly regained consciousness. Opening my eyes, I saw a nurse in white standing beside me. "You're awake," she said, checking my pulse. I struggled to speak. "What happened to me?" "You've been under immense stress and completely overexerted yourself. You suffered a temporary collapse," she explained, then turned toward the door and called out, "Family of the patient in bed 8, he's awake." "Family?" My heart skipped a beat. Could it be? The door opened slowly, and I looked toward it with eager anticipation. "Sincere, you're finally awake." The person who rushed to my bedside wasn't the one I had hoped for. The light in my eyes extinguished instantly. It was Charlie, my best friend from college. "You scared the hell out of me," Charlie said, plopping into the chair beside me. "When I got your call, I thought something terrible had happened. But seriously, man, it's just a breakup. Did you really need to push yourself to the brink like this?" I interrupted him abruptly. "Where's my phone?" Charlie looked confused for a moment. "Your phone?" He glanced around, spotted it on the nightstand, and handed it to me. "What do you need it for?" I didn't answer, just opened my messaging app and went straight to my conversation with Victoria. The last message I sent still stared back at me. "Are you really going to marry someone else?" Victoria hadn't replied. The solitary text hung there, mocking me. As I closed the messaging app, I accidentally tapped on the call log. The screen displayed over 50 outgoing calls to the same number. The most recent attempt was during the time I had collapsed. Victoria was still my pinned contact. The nurses must have tried calling her first, but she didn't pick up a single time. If Charlie, my college buddy, hadn't been in this city, who knows? I could have died alone in that hospital, and no one would have even noticed. Seeing my devastated expression, Charlie sighed heavily. Ethan couldn't hold it in any longer as he looked at my disheveled state. He sighed and said, "Man, you're still hung up on her. Look at yourself, you're a mess. Let me tell you the truth, her wedding is already set. She's getting married soon." A sharp pain shot through my chest, and I involuntarily hunched forward, coughing violently as I struggled to catch my breath. After a moment, I managed to ask hoarsely, "When?" "In 3 days." Ethan looked at me, a mixture of frustration and pity on his face. "She's already moved on and is happily starting a new life. But look at you, acting like your world has ended. Let it go, man." My lips trembled, but no words came out. It took me a long while before I could muster a raspy response. "Where is her wedding being held?" 3 days later, I arrived punctually at the entrance of the Tyranny Hotel. This was a 5-star venue, designed in the European architectural style that Victoria adored. Luxury cars filled the driveway. According to Ethan, the groom's family had reserved 200 tables for the occasion, an extravagant display of wealth. "Are you really planning to go in?" Ethan asked anxiously, standing by my side. He was worried, especially since I'd just been discharged from the hospital that morning. "I think you should reconsider," he said. "No," I replied firmly. I fixed my eyes on the greeting photo at the hotel entrance, where Victoria was holding Blake's arm, smiling blissfully. She was dressed in a pure white wedding gown, looking as radiant as an angel. Gritting my teeth, I said, "There are some things I need to ask her." The words had barely left my mouth when someone shouted, "The bride is here." My body stiffened, and I slowly turned around. A fleet of BMWs drove in, with a red one at the center. The cars came to a stop at the hotel's entrance, and the crowd surged forward. The car door opened, and Blake stepped out first. He extended his hand, and a delicate, slender hand rested in his palm. With a gentle pull, Victoria gracefully emerged from the car. Today, her makeup was flawless, enhancing her already stunning features. Her bright eyes sparkled like stars, and when she turned to look at Blake, her smile was filled with affection, reminiscent of a playful kitten seeking attention. She used to smile at me like that too. Whenever she did, I couldn't stay mad at her, no matter what. The crowd pushed me further back, and I could only catch glimpses of her from a distance. It had been 3 months since our sham divorce, and this was the first time I had seen Victoria up close again at her wedding with another man. Victoria didn't notice me at all. She clung to Blake's arm, her face glowing with happiness as she greeted the guests around her. Each smile was dazzling, yet each one felt like a dagger to my heart. Then, from another car stepped my mother-in-law, who had once claimed to be gravely ill. Now, she looked energetic and full of joy, a stark contrast to the disdainful expression she used to wear around me. "Victoria, Victoria," I muttered under my breath, my fists clenched tightly. Overwhelmed by anger and frustration, my voice grew sharp and trembled as I shouted, "Victoria." My shout cut through the congratulatory murmurs of the crowd. Victoria froze in place and turned around slowly. The moment she saw me, the smile on her face vanished, replaced by panic and embarrassment. Her grip on Blake's arm tightened, and her other hand clutched her bouquet like a lifeline. Many of the guests recognized me and turned their curious gazes toward her. Sensing the tension, Olivia quickly pushed her way through the crowd. Waving her hands to disperse the onlookers, she barked, "Move along, everyone, don't hold up the bride and groom, it's bad luck to delay the ceremony." As she spoke, she shoved me forcefully, trying to get me to leave. I sidestepped her hand and kept my eyes fixed on Victoria, my own red-rimmed with emotion. Nearly shouting, I demanded, "Victoria, didn't you say it was just a sham divorce?" A flicker of unease crossed Victoria's eyes. Beside her, Blake turned to look at her questioningly. "What sham divorce?" "A divorce is a divorce," Olivia snapped, her voice dripping with hostility. "Sincere, I'm warning you, this is my daughter's wedding. Don't you dare cause a scene." She moved to push me again, but Ethan quickly stepped in, shielding me from her. I took a step closer to Victoria, my teeth clenched in frustration. "Didn't you tell me your mom was dying? That the sham divorce was just to put her at ease? Can you tell me what the hell is going on?" With every word, my anger grew. Standing there in her white wedding gown, Victoria was as beautiful as the day I first met her, but now she felt like a stranger. Time really does fly. How could our heartfelt vows still feel so fresh in my mind, while she had already moved on? Ethan stayed by my side, blocking the crowd as I finally reached Victoria. Her fingers were pale from gripping her bouquet too tightly. "Sincere," she said, her voice trembling. "Can we talk after the wedding, please?" She glanced around nervously at the growing crowd, her tone desperate and her eyes avoiding mine. "It's not what you think. I'll explain everything after the ceremony, I promise." Her pleading voice and pitiful expression would have softened my heart in the past. But today all I felt was bitterness and anger. I let out a cold laugh. "Victoria, are you afraid I'll ruin your wedding? Are you just trying to find another excuse to lie to me?" Her face turned bright red, a mix of anger and shame. For a moment, the atmosphere froze. Everyone around us hesitated to step forward, whispering softly to one another. Just then, a hand suddenly landed on Victoria's shoulder. Blake, with his chin raised, exuded the arrogance of a victor as he sneered at me and said, "Sincere, before you question Victoria, why don't you take a good look at yourself first? You've been married to her for 4 years and haven't even had a child. But the child she had with me is nearly 5 years old. What?" My mind buzzed as if struck by a deafening thunderclap. Blake's words were like countless sharp fragments piercing through me in an instant. I felt as though I had been struck by lightning, frozen in place, my brain completely blank. Charlie burst out angrily. You two scumbags, so you've been involved for 4 years already? Charlie exploded first. With his fiery temper, how could he hold back? He lunged at Blake, grabbing him by the collar and yelling, You two are nothing but a pair of shameless cheats. 4 years? You've been lying to Sincere for 4 whole years. Charlie was so furious he was gasping for air. Turning, his eyes burned with rage as he glared at Victoria. He accused her, And you, since you've had a child with another man, why have you been pretending to care about Sincere all these years? Why did you even marry him? What on earth were you thinking? Startled by Charlie's outburst, Victoria instinctively took a step back. Let go of me. Blake struggled to pry Charlie's hands off his arm, attempting to break free. He countered, Who do you think you are to lay hands on me? Listen up. Victoria and I have always been in love. We only broke up because of a misunderstanding. Now that we've reunited, he's simply not needed anymore. You bastard, Charlie snarled, delivering a solid punch. Blake stumbled backward, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Blake, Victoria shrieked, panic and fear written all over her face. The next moment, Olivia had called security, who forcibly restrained Charlie, who was still itching for a fight. I watched Victoria's concerned and anxious demeanor, and a faint trace of mockery curled at the corners of my mouth. Victoria and I had been together since college. After graduation, in order to stay by her side, I gave up everything in my hometown and moved to her city. Back then, I knew she had an ex, but Victoria swore up and down that she no longer had feelings for him, that I was the one she loved. In the beginning, she was indeed wonderful. Our home was always tidy, and she was kind and attentive to me. Because of this, I never doubted her feelings for me. But over time, she grew colder. She left everything to me, claiming that love had turned into companionship and didn't require effort to maintain. Foolishly, I believed her. But now, seeing her nervous and caring attitude toward Blake, I finally understood. It wasn't that love had turned into companionship. From the very beginning, Victoria had never loved me. Her love had always been for someone else. What she gave me was nothing but perfunctory companionship. I spoke slowly, my voice icy. Victoria, is it true? Do you and he really have a child? I felt a bone-chilling coldness seep through me. The burning desire I had had to uncover the truth over the past few weeks had completely extinguished at this moment. Victoria lowered her head, her fingers tightly clenched at her sides. After a long pause, she barely managed to whisper, Yes. I nodded. All right, I see. My heart was completely frozen. I didn't spare Victoria another glance. Turning to the security guards, I pushed them aside and said to Charlie, Charlie, let's go. At this point, the only thing I could do for myself was to hold on to the last shred of my dignity. Charlie spat at Blake in disgust before following me as I turned to leave. We hadn't gotten far when Victoria's voice called out from behind us, Sincere, wait. Charlie glanced at me, but when he saw I had no intention of stopping, he kept walking with me. Who would have thought that Victoria, lifting the heavy hem of her dress, would break into a run, chasing after us? She reached out and grabbed my arm tightly. Sincere, she pleaded, please don't go. I looked at Victoria standing in front of me, my gaze cold and distant. What do you want now? I asked. Gasping for breath from running, Victoria looked up at me, her voice filled with desperation. She said, Sincere, I have my reasons. Please don't be angry. Once the wedding is over, I'll explain everything to you. Charlie let out a cold laugh, prying Victoria's hand off my arm. He turned to me and said, What's left to explain? Let's go. Don't bother with her. Victoria looked at me pitifully, but I turned my head away and left with Charlie. The moment we got into the car, Charlie couldn't hold back his anger anymore. Sincere, I'm telling you, don't you dare believe a word that woman says ever again. She's clearly been toying with your feelings this whole time. I've seen how much you've sacrificed for her, and for what? She betrayed you, and her kid is already 4 years old. That whole family is rotten to the core, lying to you about her mom being sick. Heaven help them if they ever have to suffer illness themselves. Charlie was seething, grinding his teeth in anger, wishing he could curse out Victoria's entire lineage. I listened in silence. I knew Charlie was trying to make me feel better, but at this point, my heart felt like a stagnant pool of water. incapable of stirring even the faintest ripple. When the car pulled up outside Charlie's apartment, I interrupted his tirade, my expression calm. "Charlie, go on up. I'll pack my things and come stay with you for a while. Is that okay?" Charlie nodded immediately. "Of course, what are brothers for?" He agreed without hesitation, though he couldn't help but give me a worried look as he added, "How about I go up with you and help you pack?" Charlie suggested with a reassuring smile. I chuckled and replied, "No need. I'll be fine. Trust me, I can handle this. I just need some closure. I don't want to be left in the dark like a fool." "All right then," he said. "We men have to stay strong." He patted me on the shoulder before heading upstairs and leaving me alone. I drove back home. For the past few days I had been out searching for Victoria and hadn't returned. A thin layer of dust had settled on the furniture, mirroring the state of our relationship, no longer pristine and untouched. I stepped into the bedroom, packed a few essentials, and pulled out the deed to the house from the drawer. Since our fake divorce had turned into a real one, it was time to settle matters. What was rightfully mine I had to reclaim. The house we currently lived in was something I had purchased outright before our marriage. Even after the divorce, it remained my personal property. I planned to sell it and use the money to move back home to spend time with my parents. Without hesitation, I blocked all contact with Victoria and moved into Charlie's place. The house sold quickly. Although it wasn't in the heart of the city, the serene surroundings made it highly sought after. As soon as I listed it with an agent, multiple potential buyers expressed interest within just a couple of days. Negotiations went smoothly, and within a week, I was already showing the property to a prospective buyer. The buyer, a woman, was immediately impressed. After touring the house inside and out, she seemed ready to finalize the deal on the spot. Just as we were about to sign the contract, Victoria suddenly appeared. She froze upon seeing a stranger in the house. Then her expression darkened, and she pointed an accusatory finger at me. "Sincere, we were only pretending to get divorced. And now you're already bringing another woman into our home?" she yelled. I didn't even want to engage. I turned away and prepared to proceed with the paperwork. Out of nowhere, Victoria stormed over, snatched the pen from my hand, and threw it forcefully to the ground. "I'm talking to you, are you deaf?" she shouted. The buyer, startled by the outburst, hesitated. She glanced at the agent, then at me, unsure of what to do. I sighed deeply, apologizing profusely to the buyer. "I'm so sorry for this situation. Could we possibly reschedule the signing for another day?" Reluctantly, she agreed. "All right, I suppose." She cast a wary glance at Victoria, who was behaving like a madwoman, and hurriedly prepared to leave with the agent. But Victoria wasn't done. She blocked the buyer's path, shouting, "No one leaves until we've talked this through." I stared at Victoria, her face twisted with fury, and felt as though I was seeing her for the first time. Back when we were in love, I only saw the good in her. Even her quirks and flaws seemed endearing to me. But now, without the rose-tinted glasses of love, all I could see was her ugliness. "Victoria," I said coldly, "we're divorced. You no longer have any say in my life." With that, I pushed her hand aside and forced a polite smile at the buyer and agent. "I'm really sorry for the inconvenience today." The agent waved it off. "It's all right, Mr. S., but I think you should sort out your personal matters first." With that, they left in a hurry. Ignoring Victoria's rage, I walked them to the elevator. When I returned, she was still standing in the entryway, glaring at me like a prosecutor ready to hand down judgment. "Sincere," she snapped. "We agreed this was just a fake divorce." I nearly laughed at how absurd it was. "Did you forget that you got remarried?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She touched her earlobe nervously and murmured, "I had no choice. And besides, my marriage to Blake is fake too. The child. That was an accident from 5 years ago. I didn't want things to end up like this either. My mom found out about the baby, and thinking her days were numbered, begged me to marry Blake just so she could enjoy her final days surrounded by family." Victoria's words tumbled out in a rush, as if it all made perfect sense. "Sincere, we've been together for so many years. Can't you just try to understand my situation?" The self-righteousness in her tone made it sound as though I was the one being unreasonable. For the first time, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. In the past, I would have patiently listened, even gone as far as blaming myself for everything. But now, her excuses meant nothing to me. I didn't want to hear a single word. And besides, during her wedding, her mom looked as healthy and energetic as ever, pushing people around like a young athlete. Where was the so-called serious illness? I looked at Victoria with disdain and said, "You and Blake are legally married. That's a fact. And since our fake divorce is now real, we'll need to divide our assets accordingly. I've already hired a lawyer, and everything will be handled through legal channels. As for this house, I bought it before we got married. It's mine, and I'm selling it. Don't ever come back." Victoria's face turned ghostly pale. She looked at my cold expression and finally realized I was serious. Her demeanor softened instantly. She stepped closer, reaching out to grab my hand. "Sincere, I won't argue with you about bringing another woman here. Just don't be mad at me anymore, okay? Once my mom passes, I'll definitely remarry you," Victoria cried out. "No need," I replied coldly, brushing her hand away. "You have a child now, just go and live your life with Blake." We had been together for 7 years, 3 in love and 4 in marriage. For so many years I had been chasing Victoria's shadow, trying to keep up. But in the end, all I got in return was her betrayal, her marriage to another man, and even a child with him. I was exhausted. I no longer wanted any ties to the woman standing before me. Seeing my resolute attitude, Victoria grew desperate, throwing a tantrum. "Sincere, this house is half mine. I won't allow you to sell it. And remember, we agreed this was just a fake divorce. Legally, it doesn't count. We're still married." I suppressed the anger rising within me, but I couldn't hold back anymore. "Victoria, your audacity is truly impressive. Whether this house is yours or not isn't up to you. It's up to the law. I bought this house outright before we got married, so it belongs to me alone. As for the divorce, every document is stamped and official. Do you need me to fetch them right now to show you?" My pointed words left Victoria speechless. I had no intention of arguing further. I opened the door and said, "You can leave now." "Sincere," she pleaded, still refusing to go. I grabbed her arm and dragged her out. "You can wait for my lawyer to contact you," I said, slamming the door in her face. From outside, Victoria kept pounding on the door, shouting my name over and over, but I ignored her entirely and walked to the master bedroom. Inside the closet, it was obvious whose space dominated. Victoria's clothes filled every rack, many of them still unworn. In contrast, my own clothes were crammed into a small corner, all old and worn. I had always been frugal with myself but generous with her. Now, seeing this stark contrast, all I felt was bitterness. I grabbed a few large bags and started tossing her clothes and belongings into them. Once packed, I carried the bags to the balcony. From below, I saw Victoria just leaving the building, her voice hoarse from shouting. Bang! The sound startled her and she let out a scream. Looking down, she found her clothes scattered around her feet. She looked up at me in shock, only to see me standing on the balcony with more bags, which I threw down mercilessly. Her clothes fluttered in the air like fragments of my shattered heart. Every piece of hers felt like it had been etched into me, and now, ripping them away felt like scraping my flesh, painful and bloody. Even though I kept telling myself she wasn't worth the pain, it was hard to erase the memories of the genuine love I once had for Victoria. Her eyes turned red and she crouched down, picking up the clothes piece by piece, as if trying to salvage what was left of our relationship. But when she looked up again, the balcony was empty. After throwing her out, I contacted a real estate agent to sell the house. To make things easier, I moved out of Charlie's place and back into my own. But Victoria was relentless. She started showing up every day to harass me. One time, she even used her key to let herself in when I refused to open the door. That day, I was in the shower when she barged in and threw herself into my arms. Sincere, I know I was wrong. This is our home. Please don't sell it. Just forgive me this once, okay? Her hand slid over me like a slippery snake, trying to ignite something in me. But all I felt was revulsion. I shoved her off with force, like discarding trash. That day, she caused a huge scene at my door, crying, screaming, and rolling on the ground. The neighbors, fed up with her antics, almost called security to intervene. It wasn't until Blake called her for the 18th time that she reluctantly left, glancing back at me with every step. The moment she was gone, I changed the locks. From then on, no matter how much she banged on the door, I refused to let her in. I thought she would eventually give up, but instead, her actions attracted her dying mother's attention. Within days, Olivia showed up with Victoria, hammer in hand, smashing at my door lock. The loud banging echoed through the hallway, drawing out curious neighbors. "Sincere," Olivia bellowed. "If you don't open this door, I'll come here every day and hammer away. I'll bring a megaphone and let the whole neighborhood know what kind of man you are, not wanting to cause more trouble or hinder the house sale." I reluctantly opened the door. The moment I did, Olivia and Victoria stormed in. Olivia shoved me hard, glaring at me with furious eyes. "Sincere, you've already divorced her. Why can't you let Victoria go? How shameless can you be?" she spat. "You've been together for so long and don't even have a child, yet you still cling to her." Her words twisted the truth entirely. I had planned to reason with them calmly, but hearing such blatant lies, I decided I wasn't going to tolerate them anymore. "Why don't we have kids? Are you really unaware?" I stared intensely at Olivia, my eyes sharp and unwavering. When Victoria and I first got married, Olivia moved into our home under the guise of helping us improve our health. But instead of helping, she spent her days living in leisure, never lifting a finger to do anything, and incessantly forcing us to drink bizarre concoctions, claiming that it would help us conceive sooner. We drank those concoctions for a long time, even without using any contraception. Yet Victoria never got pregnant. Suspicion crept into my mind, and I started worrying that something might be wrong with me. So, I secretly went to a hospital for a checkup. The doctor informed me that the so-called health remedies I'd been drinking were actually intended to reduce sperm count. That day, I stormed out of the hospital, seething with rage. When I got home, Olivia was handing me another bowl of that cursed concoction. At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to smash the bowl and confront her. But just then, Victoria walked in after work. She looked exhausted and hugged me, complaining, "Sincere, I'm so tired. When will it finally be my turn to get promoted?" Victoria was in the midst of a crucial stage in her career, constantly stressed about work. If I argued with her mother at that moment, it would only add to her burden. I swallowed my anger, convincing myself that maybe Olivia was just worried that having a child might hinder Victoria's career. So I decided to keep quiet, throwing away the concoctions every day and switching to contraception. I endured this silently, hoping things would improve, but instead, all I got was her having a child with someone else. Olivia, looking a bit flustered under my piercing gaze, quickly put on a righteous expression. "If you want to blame someone, blame your bad luck. You deserve this." "You're right," I said with a bitter laugh. "I deserve this. I was blind to see through people. But doesn't that mean you're nearing your end too? Is that what you deserve?" Olivia's face turned ashen. She clutched her chest and gasped heavily, glaring at me. "How dare you curse me?" she sputtered, face flushed with rage. Victoria quickly stepped in to support her mother, frowning as she looked at me. "Sincere, my mom isn't in great health. Can't you stop provoking her?" I coldly replied. "You came looking for this. If you don't want me to provoke her, take her and leave." Victoria bit her lip and said, "You're in such a hurry to kick us out. Are you planning to sell the house?" "Sincere, you can't sell this house," Olivia shouted in disbelief. "What? You're selling the house?" At her words, Olivia suddenly seemed energized. She sprang up and pointed her finger at me, yelling, "How dare you sell my daughter's house?" "It's hers." Just then, a familiar voice rang out from the doorway. "You mean the house with my son's name on the deed?" I instinctively looked up and saw a familiar figure standing at the door. "Dad," I exclaimed in surprise and joy. My father, George, had traveled all the way from a distant city. I never expected him to show up here. "Dad, what brings you here?" I asked. George gritted his teeth and said, "You spineless idiot, if I didn't come, people would keep walking all over you." He strode inside, surveying Victoria and Olivia with a cold, sharp gaze. Then he turned to me, his eyes filled with disappointment. Shame washed over me. Years ago, my father had advised me against pursuing a marriage that lacked family approval, saying such unions rarely lead to happiness. He suspected Victoria wasn't truly in love with me, but I was too blinded by love to listen. I had insisted on following her to marry her, which had angered him so much that he threatened to cut ties with me. For 3 years we hadn't spoken. Now George had come all this way, likely already aware of our divorce. Victoria recognized my father immediately and tried to greet him. "Dad." George gave her a disdainful look and raised his hand to stop her. "Don't call me Dad. I don't deserve that from you. Save it for someone else." With my father present, Victoria didn't dare act too brazenly. She tugged at Olivia's arm, signaling her to leave. But Olivia refused to give up and kept arguing. "You came at the right time, George. This house belongs to my daughter, but your son is trying to sell it. As her father-in-law, shouldn't you say something to him?" George's tone was ice cold. "My son has already divorced your daughter. Stop trying to claim connections that no longer exist. This house is in my son's name, so he has every right to sell it." Olivia's eyes widened in disbelief. "So what if it's in his name? It's marital property. They were married, so half the house belongs to my daughter. No one is selling this house without our consent." With that, she shamelessly plopped down on the couch, making herself at home as if she had no intention of leaving. Victoria glanced at me, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but she quietly followed her mother and sat beside her. I had never seen such audacious and shameless behavior in my life. For a moment, I was too furious to even find the words to respond. Just as things seemed to settle down, Dad turned to me with a faint smile, patted my shoulder, and said, "Now you finally see it clearly, don't you? This is why your mother and I disapproved back then." Saying this, he glanced at Victoria and Olivia, who were sitting on the couch, determined not to budge, and said coldly, "If you're so set on claiming this house, then we'll have no choice but to get a lawyer involved and settle the property division today." Olivia retorted, "Just one lawyer? Who knows if they're on your side?" "No way, Victoria. Call a lawyer too. We'll get 2 lawyers and make this crystal clear." Victoria hesitated for a moment but quickly shut her mouth after a sharp glare from her mom. She sneaked a glance at me before reluctantly pulling out her phone, finding a law firm, and making the call. Olivia gave us a smug look, while Dad calmly patted my shoulder and said, "Let's sit and wait for the lawyers to arrive." We all sat in silence on the couches, waiting for the lawyers to arrive. Before long, 2 lawyers showed up, one after the other. As soon as Olivia's lawyer entered, she grabbed her by the arm and said anxiously, "This house belongs to my daughter. You have to help her get it back." The female lawyer patted Olivia's hand, signaling her to calm down, then turned toward Victoria and me. "Could you tell me when this house was purchased? May I see the deed?" Before I could speak, Olivia interjected, "I know this. It was bought after they got together, so it's marital property. My daughter is entitled to a share." The female lawyer frowned slightly, glanced at Olivia, and asked again, "And how was the payment for the house arranged?" This time I spoke first. "I paid for it in full before the marriage." The female lawyer's expression immediately turned serious. She exchanged a glance with the male lawyer my family had hired, and they seemed to understand each other instantly. The male lawyer spoke up, "Ma'am, according to existing marital property laws, assets acquired during the marriage, such as salaries, bonuses, labor service income, business or investment returns, intellectual property income, or inherited or gifted property, are considered marital property. However, this house was paid for in full by the husband before the marriage, making it a premarital asset. As such, it belongs solely to him, and the wife has no claim to it." Olivia, however, was relentless. How much money could he have as some poor outsider? My daughter told me she gave him her salary card before the marriage. Even if he used his money to buy the house, he spent my daughter's money on everything else. My daughter is too naive, only putting his name on the deed. Turning to her lawyer, Olivia continued, "You're a woman too. You should understand how hard it is for women. My daughter is already suffering enough through this divorce. Now she's about to lose her assets as well. You have to fight for us." The female lawyer looked troubled as she glanced back and forth between Olivia and me, unsure who to believe. I turned to Victoria, who sat there in silence, letting her mother make a scene. She kept her head down, nervously picking at her fingernails, and said nothing. At that moment, my heart turned completely cold. I looked straight at Victoria and asked, "Don't you have anything to say?" Victoria suddenly looked up, meeting my eyes. I stared at her, my voice firm as I pressed, "You know better than anyone whether I ever spent your money, don't you?" During the years I was with Victoria, I saw how hard she worked and felt sorry for her. When she said she didn't want to do housework anymore, I took on most of the chores, keeping our home in perfect order. Not only that, but I worked harder at my job, covering most of our household expenses. Meanwhile, her earnings went entirely to socializing. She was always out with friends or shopping, buying bags, clothes, and jewelry by the sackful, never spending a penny on me. Even that salary card she supposedly handed over to me was taken back under the pretense of buying a car. Of course, the car never materialized. She always claimed we didn't have enough money. On our wedding anniversary, after scrimping and saving, I finally managed to buy the red BMW she had longed for. I picked up the car and drove to her office building to surprise her. I waited all day watching the sun set as the building emptied, but she never came down. Calls went unanswered. It wasn't until I ran into a coworker working late that I found out she hadn't been to work in a while. That night, I sat in the car for a long time, my mind racing. Finally, she answered her phone. Instead of sounding apologetic, Victoria sounded irritated. "Why are you calling me so much? Don't you know I'm busy?" I said, "I went to your office." Silence on the other end. I continued, "Your coworker said you've been on leave. Where are you?" After a pause, Victoria said, "I'm at the hospital. My mom's sick." Hearing Olivia was unwell, my bottled-up anger was instantly replaced by concern. "What happened? Which hospital? I'll come right over." "No need," Victoria said hurriedly. "You don't need to come." She hesitated, then added, "You know my mom doesn't like you. She doesn't want to see you. That's why I didn't tell you. I was worried you might overthink it. Don't worry. I'll take care of Mom. It'll be fine." Victoria kept stopping me from seeing her mom. Although I felt uncomfortable about it, I held back to avoid making things hard for her. But now, Olivia not only lives here without any issues, she's even trying to take over my belongings. Watching Victoria sit there like a turtle retreating into its shell, I felt more and more uneasy. I said, "Victoria, do you need me to pull out the financial records from the past few years to show you?" Hearing this, she finally reacted. She shook her head irritably and snapped at her mom. "Can you stop making a scene? This house wasn't paid for by me at all. Sincere bought it himself." Olivia got anxious upon hearing that. "How could you say that? I see now you're still speaking up for him, aren't you? Victoria, stop being so kind and think about yourself for once, will you?" Listening to her, I almost wanted to throw up. How could she shamelessly say something like that? Victoria couldn't take it anymore either. She said, "Enough, are you leaving or not? If you're not leaving, I will." As soon as she said that, she stood up to leave, but her mom grabbed her forcefully. "You're not going anywhere. The lawyer is here, so we need to settle this today," Olivia insisted. "Exactly," I added. Then under Olivia's intense glare, I slowly stood up and said, "You're right. Since the lawyer is here, it's a perfect time to discuss your insurance fraud." What insurance fraud?" Olivia shouted. "I'm warning you, don't make baseless accusations." Her voice was loud, but there was a hint of guilt in it. I smirked and said, "Am I making baseless accusations? We'll know as soon as we check your medical records. A year ago, you bought illness insurance and even used my phone to pay for it. 3 months ago, you filed a claim. If you weren't actually ill, then this is insurance fraud." I waved my phone in front of her. "I can call the police right now." You. Olivia's face turned pale. Just moments ago, she was full of arrogance, but now she was utterly defeated. Victoria quickly grabbed her mom and said, "Mom, stop it. Let's go." Then she pulled Olivia toward the door. Olivia's face turned red with anger, but she didn't dare say another word as Victoria dragged her out. The female lawyer gave them a glance and awkwardly followed them out. Watching Victoria and her mom leave, pulling and tugging at each other, I finally understood why over the years. Despite her efforts to mediate between me and her mom, our relationship had only gotten worse. Olivia was too domineering. If you didn't use a firm hand, she wouldn't listen, even to her own daughter. "Mr. S., it seems the matter is resolved," the male lawyer said, standing up. "Congratulations." "Thank you for your help today," I replied, shaking his hand. "I still need your assistance in dividing the assets. I don't want to keep getting entangled with Victoria. Although it cost me some money, I finally managed to temporarily rid myself of the headache that was Olivia." I let out a sigh of relief. After the lawyers left, it was just me and Dad at home. Dad's eyes reddened as he stared at me for a long moment before lifting his hand to pat my head. "You silly child, you got divorced and didn't even tell us. If it weren't for Charlie calling us, your mom and I would still be in the dark about it." His face showed a mix of anger and concern as he said, "What's the matter? Are you upset with us? Have you decided to cut ties with your mom and me?" Looking at him, a wave of sadness washed over me. People are strange creatures. When you're alone, you can endure any hardship, but the moment someone shows you care, you can't hold back. Dad had only said a couple of sentences, and I already felt my tears welling up. I lowered my head and wiped my eyes in embarrassment. "Dad, where's Mom? How have you two been all these years?" Ever since our last argument, Dad had stopped answering my calls. At first, I had Charlie call for me. I would listen in and have Charlie relay my messages, but as work got busier, I could only have Charlie check in occasionally. Fortunately, my parents had remained in good health. "Your mom wasn't feeling well with a cold recently, but she's much better now. When we heard about your divorce, she got really worried. She wanted to come with me, but she's still coughing, so I came alone," Dad explained, patting my arm. He looked around and said, "You've really made something of yourself here in New York. You even bought a house." I chuckled, tears still in my eyes. "But I still miss being home." "Dad, once I sell this house, I'll come back with you to visit Mom." Dad nodded repeatedly. "Good. Coming home is best. This city may have more opportunities, but it's tough. Just look at you, you've gotten so thin. When your mom sees you, she'll feel bad again." Dad rambled on for a while. I used to think he wasn't this talkative. He always had a fiery temper, but after so many years apart, he seemed like a different person, gentler, more sentimental. Looking at his graying hair, I felt a growing sense of guilt. This time when I go back, I'll make sure to spend more time with my parents and take good care of them. Over the following week, I listed the house at a slightly lower price than the market value. Without Victoria or Olivia causing trouble, the house sold quickly. Afterward, I glanced at the asset division list sent by the lawyer once again. According to the list, not only do I not owe Victoria any money, but she actually owes me. However, I couldn't be bothered to argue about it. I just wanted to reclaim the major assets like the house. I didn't want to have any further entanglements with Victoria. I sent the original asset division list directly to her email. Victoria didn't reply, and I didn't reach out to her again. On the day Dad and I were heading home, Charlie came to see me off. Full of reluctance, he said, "There were 4 of us in the dorm, and now even you're leaving. What am I going to do after you're gone? I'll be so lonely. Why don't you take me with you?" His words made me feel both amused and touched. I knew Charlie was just reluctant to see me go. The guy was about to get married, and his fiancée doted on him so much, how could he really be lonely? Still, his words stirred a hint of melancholy within me. I teased him, "All right, don't get all sentimental on me. I know you too well. I'll be back when you get married." After giving him a heartfelt hug, I turned around and boarded the plane with Dad. As the plane took off, I looked out at the city of New York growing smaller and smaller in the distance. My heart was filled with a mix of emotions, hard to describe. In truth, if it hadn't been for Victoria, I wouldn't have come to New York in the first place. I wasn't someone with grand ambitions. Staying in my small hometown suited me just fine. But Victoria wanted to stay in the city and persuaded me to move here for better opportunities. That's why I left my roots behind and came here. Now, 3 years have passed. I've managed to save enough money for a house and gain some work experience. It's time to go back home and start fresh again. As I thought about the future, my spirits lifted, I had a few $100,000 saved up, enough to buy a beautiful house back home. With the remaining money, I planned to start a tech company. I had the experience, and there weren't many companies like that in my hometown. Maybe I could make a name for myself. However, when I stepped into the house, I didn't even have time to speak before hearing a violent coughing sound from inside. The sound was so heart-wrenching it made my chest tighten. Dad and I exchanged a worried glance and quickly walked in. I heard Grandma's voice say, "You really should go to the hospital to get checked out." My mom, coughing fiercely, replied, "It's nothing serious, just a minor cold. I'll wait for Sincere to come back." Hearing this, I quickened my pace and called out loudly, "Mom!" My mom, who was covering her mouth as she coughed, looked up at me with surprise and joy in her eyes. "Sincere, you're finally back," she said. I quickly dropped my luggage and rushed over to embrace her tightly. My voice cracked with emotion as I said, "Mom, I'm sorry, it's my fault for making you worry." She responded, it's okay. You're back now, and that's all that matters." Her eyes filled with tears as she let go of me and carefully examined me. With trembling hands, she gently touched my face and said, "You've lost weight. You must have had a tough time these past few years." I shook my head quickly, my concern focused entirely on her. "Mom, you're coughing so badly. Dad said it's just a cold, but have you been to the hospital?" "Oh, I'm fine," she said, coughing even harder, but still waving her hand dismissively. "It's just a little cough. Resting for a few days will fix it." Grandma interjected, "This isn't just a little cough. She's been coughing so badly at night that she can't sleep. I've been telling her to see a doctor, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying she wanted to wait for you to come back and see you first." "Mom," I glanced at Grandma, who gave me a knowing look, but I understood what she meant. My eyes reddened with guilt. "Mom, it's my fault. I should have come back sooner." "You silly child." Mom smiled and shook her head. "As long as you're back, I'm happy." I immediately said, "Mom, let me take you to the hospital now." She tried to resist. "There's no need," but I wouldn't take no for an answer. After much coaxing, she finally agreed. On the way to the hospital, I touched her forehead and realized she had a fever. Maybe now that her heart was at ease, her body had finally let go of its tension and the symptoms were surfacing. Dad rushed to the hospital, driving as fast as he could. After a series of examinations, the doctor's grave expression confirmed my fears. The patient's condition is serious. She has pneumonia, and her lungs are already showing signs of severe inflammation. Immediate hospitalization is required. "I should have come back sooner," I said, overwhelmed with guilt. Mom comforted me instead. "It's okay. Pneumonia isn't anything that can't be treated." Dad added, "Exactly. As long as she listens to the doctor and follows the treatment plan, everything will be fine." We hurried to complete the admission procedures, but it was currently peak pneumonia season, and the hospital had no available beds. Mom could only be temporarily accommodated in the hallway. That night, I stayed by her side and didn't sleep a wink. Early the next morning, my phone rang, waking me up. When I checked the screen, I saw it was Victoria calling. After sending her that email, she'd never replied, and I thought she had finally given up on bothering me. But now she was calling again. Frowning, I hung up the call without hesitation. Just then, a nurse called out. "Olivia, yes, here," I responded immediately, raising my hand when I heard Mom's name. The nurse glanced at me and said, "Come over here." The hospital bed was finally ready. I was overjoyed and quickly packed up, woke up Mom, and headed to the hospital room. After much effort settling her in, I sent Dad a message. Before I could even take a breath, my phone rang again. A quick glance showed it was Victoria calling. My brows furrowed even deeper. We were already divorced and she had started a new family. Why does she keep calling me? I didn't answer the call. From that day on, Victoria seemed determined to bother me. She called every day, leaving me frustrated. I eventually blocked her number. At that moment, all my thoughts were focused on taking care of Mom. The doctor said her pneumonia was severe, so I didn't dare slack off. During the day, I kept a close eye on her IV drip, and only at night would I catch a nap on the hospital's caretaker cot. After a few days of this routine, Dad forcibly sent me home to rest. Dragging my exhausted body back home, I planned to take a shower, get some sleep, and prepare some of Mom's favorite dishes to bring to her. But as soon as I entered the house, I heard a familiar voice. "Grandma, I've been so busy with work lately and haven't had the chance to visit you. Sincere told me you like the pastries from this shop, so I bought one of each flavor for you to try. Let me know which one you like, and I'll get it for you next time." Grandma was smiling from ear to ear. "Good, good, what a sweet girl. Sincere is so lucky to have married you. I love all the ones you brought." Victoria replied, "That's wonderful." My face darkened as I walked into the hallway. Victoria and Grandma were sitting on the sofa, chatting warmly. Grandma was holding her hand affectionately. No one outside the family knew that Victoria and I had divorced. Since I returned home, I had been preoccupied with taking care of Mom at the hospital, leaving no time to bring it up. Plus, Grandma's health was fragile, and no one dared to tell her about the divorce. Looking at her happy face, I felt conflicted. Back then, Dad disapproved of my relationship with Victoria, so I persistently begged Grandma to intervene on my behalf. I even secretly took the household register to marry Victoria. If Grandma found out we had divorced, she would likely feel guilty. That's why I had planned to find the right moment to gently break the news to her. But Victoria had seized the opportunity instead. When she saw me come in, her eyes lit up. "Sincere," she called out cheerfully. I ignored her completely. Grandma teased, "Young love is so sweet. You can't bear to be apart for even a few days, Sincere. Look at Victoria, she missed you so much she came all the way here to see you." I swallowed hard and said, "Grandma, isn't this usually your nap time? It's getting late, you should rest for a while." Grandma chuckled knowingly. All right, I understand. You young folks need your privacy. Grandma will go to her room and leave you two alone." She patted Victoria's hand with a smile before heading to her room. As soon as she was gone, I strode over, grabbed Victoria's arm and dragged her outside. She stumbled and broke free, clutching her arm in pain. "You're hurting me," she protested, her voice full of grievance. I stared at her coldly, unmoved. "Why are you here?" "Sincere," she said. "Your birthday is coming up. I wanted to celebrate it with you." Victoria tilted her head, her eyes sparkling. "I even bought you a gift. Do you want to know what it is?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. For years, she had always forgotten my birthday, making up endless excuses. Whenever I reminded her, she would mock me for being petty, telling me that a man shouldn't be so sensitive. Now that we were apart, she had gone out of her way to celebrate my birthday. "Victoria," I said bluntly, "don't you think you're being ridiculous? We're divorced, and you have a new family now. Please recognize your position and stop bothering me. Also, Grandma doesn't know about the divorce yet. She's old, and I don't want her to be upset. Please be mindful." With that, I turned around and went inside, slamming the door behind me. "Sincere," Victoria cried out, leaning against the door with a sob. "In my heart, you will always be my husband. That will never change." The door remained shut, blocking out her voice. I stood there for a long moment before finally walking deeper into the house. In the days that followed, I continued shuttling between home and the hospital. Perhaps my words had struck a chord, as Victoria didn't bother me again. Mom's pneumonia gradually improved, and I thought the tough times were finally over. But Blake's appearance shattered that fragile peace. Over the phone, Grandma's voice trembled. "Sincere, tell Mom, is it true that you and Victoria are divorced?" Blake's angry shouts could be heard in the background. "Ask him yourself, ask if they've been divorced all along," Grandma pleaded. "Sincere, please tell me the truth." My heart leaped into my throat as I hurriedly said, "Grandma, don't listen to anyone's nonsense. Please wait for me to come back." With that, I quickly hung up the phone and bolted out the door. While running, I called my dad. "Dad, Blake has gone to our house. Grandma is home alone right now. Please get there as soon as you can." As I spoke, I sprinted down the stairs as fast as I could, jumped into my car, and sped toward home. By the time I reached the front door, I was breathless, my hands trembling so much that it took me several tries to fit the key into the lock. Finally, I managed to unlock the door, and inside I could hear Blake's angry shouting. "You and your son, Sincere, are absolutely shameless," Blake yelled. "You two are divorced, and yet he can't stop clinging to Victoria." Now she's left me and our child behind to deal with this mess. You people have no decency. What kind of family raises a son like that? Is he incapable of living without her? Why can't he just let Victoria go? With a loud bang, I burst through the door, but what greeted my eyes was a sight that froze my blood. Grandma was clutching her chest, collapsed on the floor. Grandma. I felt a deafening buzz in my head as if all the blood in my body had rushed to the surface. I stumbled toward her, dropping to my knees with a thud, and cradled her tightly in my arms. Grandma, wake up. Her eyes remained closed, her hand pressed to her chest, her face contorted in pain. Blake took a step back, hastily trying to excuse himself. This has nothing to do with me. I didn't touch her at that moment. My dad arrived. Seeing Grandma on the floor, his expression changed drastically, and he shouted, "Quick, we need to get her to the hospital right now." I carefully lifted Grandma in my arms, ignoring Blake entirely. Dad and I rushed to the car and sped toward the nearest hospital. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely dial the nurse's station. When we pulled up to the hospital, the nurses were already waiting with a stretcher at the entrance. I followed the stretcher as it was wheeled inside, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. Grandma, look at me," I pleaded, sobbing so hard I could barely get the words out. But she remained motionless, her face pale and lips purplish. There was no response. When the stretcher disappeared into the emergency room and the door closed behind it, Dad and I were left standing outside. The red light above the door lit up, and my legs turned to jelly. I nearly collapsed to the floor, but Dad caught me just in time. "Son, don't panic," he said, trying to steady me. "Sit down for now." My legs were trembling uncontrollably as I forced myself into a chair. I turned to look at Dad, fear and anxiety written all over my face. "Dad, Grandma will be okay, right?" "She'll be fine," Dad said firmly, though the heavy look on his face betrayed his words. We both kept our eyes glued to that closed door, unable to blink, unwilling to move. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, until finally, the red light went out. We both shot to our feet as the door slowly opened, and the doctor emerged. The regret on the doctor's face was like a dagger to my heart. "I'm sorry," he said. "The patient didn't make it. She passed away at 2:28 p.m. on February 17th. We did everything we could. Please accept our condolences." The words hit me like a thunderclap. My mind went blank. Grandma was gone. The doctor's lips kept moving, but I couldn't hear anything else. My thoughts drowned in a single, overwhelming realization. It was my fault. Grandma died because of me. "Sincere," a voice called out from the distance. I turned my head in a daze to see Victoria rushing toward me in her high heels. The sharp clicks of her heels echoed in the silent corridor. "How's Grandma?" "I'm so sorry, Sincere. I didn't know Blake would come here, let alone confront Grandma." "You have to believe me, I had no idea things would turn out this way," she said breathlessly, reaching out to grab my hand. "I'll stay with you while we wait for Grandma. Don't worry, she'll be fine. She's always been strong." Before her hand could touch mine, I violently shook it off. Victoria froze, her expression stunned as she saw the fury blazing in my eyes. Then, with a loud slap, my hand struck her face. "Get out, Victoria, just get out," I roared. Victoria staggered back 2 steps, completely dazed. It took her a moment to react. She clutched her cheek, looking around at the curious stares of passing patients and family members. Their murmurs and pointed fingers made her face flush with embarrassment and anger. "Can you stop being so unreasonable? I already told you it wasn't intentional. Why are you taking it out on me?" she yelled back, her voice trembling with both outrage and humiliation. "Victoria," my dad interjected, suppressing his grief as he stepped forward. "I think you should leave." "I'm not leaving," Victoria stubbornly insisted. She held her cheek, looking at my dad and then at me, as if suddenly realizing something. Her face darkened with rage. "I get it now. It's you, isn't it? You've been trying to drive a wedge between Sincere and me all along. You never approved of us being together. Now that we're having problems, you're trying to use this opportunity to break us apart. I know you've never liked me, but Sincere married me. Can't you just stop bad-mouthing me to him? If we're happy, isn't that enough for you?" Her gaze shifted to the emergency room door. And as for Grandma, she's faking it, isn't she? The door's open now. If you're going to lie, at least try harder. Victoria. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Interrupting her mid-sentence, I looked up, my bloodshot eyes staring straight at her. Victoria, Grandma has passed away. The moment those words left my mouth, Victoria froze. Her disbelief was evident as she stared at me. Stammering, she asked, "You're joking, right? That's impossible. You all must have conspired to trick me," I replied coldly. "Victoria, how long are you going to keep fooling yourself? You were the one who betrayed this relationship first. Now you have a husband, a child. Why are you still tormenting me?" Her gaze collided with my blood-red eyes, and for a moment she was left speechless. Watching her, I was consumed by regret. If only I hadn't insisted on being with Victoria back then, Grandma would never have met her. If I had listened to reason and not been so stubborn, maybe Grandma wouldn't have died. Grandma's death wasn't just caused by Victoria and Blake, it was also partly my fault. I was just as much an indirect accomplice. My hands clenched tightly into fists, my nails digging into my palms so deeply that blood began to seep out. Yet I felt no pain. Victoria was shaken by my relentless accusations. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't muster a single word. "Dad," his voice hoarse, said, "Miss Victoria, we need to take care of the funeral arrangements now. Please leave. While you didn't deliver the final blow, you were the cause of it. We don't want to see you here." Victoria's breathing grew rapid. She stared at me, her eyes gradually welling up with tears. After what felt like an eternity, she finally turned and left. As I watched her walk away, the emotions I had been holding back finally overwhelmed me. I collapsed into a chair, burying my face in my hands, and sobbed uncontrollably. Mom had learned the news of Grandma's passing on the same day she was discharged from the hospital. The shock caused her vision to go black, and if Dad hadn't been there, she might have fainted on the spot. I dropped to my knees in front of Mom with a thud. "I'm so sorry, Mom, it's all my fault. I was blinded back then, refusing to listen to you and insisting on marrying Victoria. Grandma's death is on me." Tears streamed down Mom's face as she looked at me kneeling before her, her expression a mixture of pain and sorrow. She reached out to help me up and said, "This isn't your fault. After all, no one can predict the future. The blame lies solely on the scum who caused your grandma such distress. We must not let him go unpunished." Clenching my teeth, I replied, "Don't worry, Mom. I will make sure justice is served." After sending Mom home, I began handling Grandma's funeral arrangements. We held the wake for 3 days at the funeral home, followed by the burial service. On the day of the funeral, many people came to pay their respects. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw Victoria's silhouette, but when I turned to look again, she was gone. I didn't bother to investigate further. After the funeral, I went to the police station to file a report. "Officer, Victoria's persistent harassment has severely disrupted my life. Moreover, her husband barged into my home without permission and verbally abused an elderly woman, leading to her death. Under these circumstances, I believe I have the right to file a complaint." The officer, startled by my somber demeanor, immediately replied with firm resolve, "Of course. If someone's death is caused by the deliberate actions of another, it constitutes a criminal case. We can open an investigation. We'll summon the suspects to the station immediately." Victoria and Blake hadn't returned to the city yet, and both had gone into hiding. The police couldn't locate them right away, so they told me to wait for further updates. It wasn't until the following afternoon that I received a call to come to the station. When I arrived, both Blake and Victoria were already there. The moment Blake saw me, his expression darkened, and he launched into a tirade. "Sincere, how dare you call the cops on us?" I stared at him coldly. "Why wouldn't I? You and Victoria caused my grandmother's death, and you will face the consequences of your actions." Blake retorted, "That old woman died because of her own health issues. All I did was speak the truth. How is that my fault?" He adamantly denied any responsibility. Fortunately, the S family had security cameras, and I had already submitted the footage when I filed the report. The officer played the video, and Blake's voice came through loud and clear. "This is all your fault for raising him poorly. People like you don't even deserve to be alive." With every vile word from Blake, the officer's frown deepened. By the time the video ended, Blake's face was a mix of red and pale hues as he tried to defend himself. "Sure, maybe I was harsh, but I never laid a hand on her. How does her death have anything to do with me?" The officer responded sternly. "Entering someone's home without permission is already a crime. Furthermore, your words and actions directly contributed to her death, which is a violation of the law. The court will determine the final judgment." Blake slumped into his chair, defeated, like a plant wilting under frost. The officer then turned to Victoria. As for Ms. Victoria, before he could finish, a sharp voice interrupted him. "Wait a minute." Following the officer's gaze, I saw Olivia storm into the station. The moment she laid eyes on me, she raised her hand, ready to strike. Having endured her bullying for so many years, I was more than prepared. As her hand came toward me, I grabbed her wrist mid-air and shoved her backward. Olivia stumbled, her foot twisting with a sickening crunch as she fell, letting out a pained scream. She shouted, "Sincere, you ungrateful thing, how dare you strike an elder?" Olivia seethed. I chuckled coldly and retorted, "And who are you to call yourself an elder?" She shouted back. "I am your mother-in-law." I replied calmly, "You are now Blake's mother-in-law." Olivia pointed a trembling finger at me, her teeth clenched in anger, as if she wanted to gouge my eyes out. The police officer intervened. "That's enough, stop arguing." With a sharp slap, he threw the documents in his hand onto the table. "You think this is a marketplace? Enough with the shouting," he barked. Turning to Victoria, he added with a hint of mockery, "Ms. Victoria, according to the records, you recently divorced Mr. S. and immediately registered your marriage with Mr. Blake. So why are you still pestering your ex-husband?" His words left Victoria speechless. She didn't dare to reveal the truth about their fake divorce and found herself at a loss for words. Without any valid explanation, her silence only reinforced the officer's disdain. The officer's sarcasm deepened. "Ms. Victoria, since you and Mr. S no longer have a marital relationship, your unauthorized intrusion into his residence constitutes a violation. You will need to be detained." Olivia's face turned pale. "Detained? No way," she exclaimed. The officer replied coldly, "This is a police station, not a place where you call the shots. We have conclusive evidence proving your daughter and Mr. Blake trespassed into someone else's property. Furthermore, Mr. Blake's actions led to the death of another person. He must be placed under administrative detention pending trial." Olivia argued hysterically, "What death?" At most, he said a few harsh words. "Since when is that against the law?" She rambled on. "And even if he upset that old lady, it wasn't intentional. It was an accident." Listening to Olivia defend Blake so fervently, I couldn't help but smirk internally. Truly, she adored her son-in-law. If it had been me in Blake's position, Olivia would have likely thrown me in jail without hesitation. Encouraged by Olivia's support, Blake perked up as if injected with adrenaline. "Exactly," he said. "How was I supposed to know she'd suddenly collapse? Maybe she was already sick. I'm innocent." Victoria remained silent, watching her mother and Blake's hysterics with a vacant expression, as though her soul had been drained. Yet the undeniable truth was that my grandmother had died in front of Blake, a fact that no amount of arguing could change. Initially, the police tried to reason with them, but they soon grew tired of the antics. Without further ado, they detained both Blake and Victoria. Olivia tried to block the officers but was quickly restrained. "If you continue to disrupt our work, we'll charge you with obstruction of justice," one officer warned sternly. At this, Olivia finally quieted down, though she still shot me a look filled with venomous hatred, as if she wished to tear me apart. I ignored her completely. This was a police station, after all. If Olivia dared to cross the line, she'd just end up in jail alongside her beloved son-in-law. "Mr. S. will notify you once the trial results are out," the officer said. Satisfied, I left the station. Victoria's involvement wasn't severe enough to warrant a sentence, so she was released after being detained for 2 weeks. Blake, however, still faced legal consequences. The day before Blake's sentencing, I visited him at the station. He reeked of sweat and grime, having gone days without a shower. Though disheveled and pathetic, he tried to maintain an air of superiority, lifting his chin defiantly. "Don't think locking me up here means you've won," he sneered. "Victoria only loves me. You're nothing but a loser who wasted years of effort and still failed to win her heart." Contrary to his expectations, I didn't respond with anger. Instead, I calmly dismantled his bravado. "Victoria has been out of custody for several days now. Has she come to visit you?" His face instantly darkened and his composure crumbled. He muttered weakly, "So what if she hasn't? I'm still her lawful husband." I asked, "And what about your child? Do you really think Victoria is capable of taking care of her?" At the mention of the child, Blake finally lost his composure. Gripping the bars tightly, he demanded, "What do you mean? What's happened to my child?" I stared at him steadily. At that moment, he resembled a rabid dog. The thought of losing to someone like him suddenly struck me as absurd. Clearly, it wasn't my fault. It was Victoria's lack of judgment. "Say something," Blake shouted, his voice frantic. Only then did I part my lips and reply slowly. I heard that while Victoria was wallowing in self-pity, the child developed a fever. She didn't notice for days, and by the time the child was taken to the hospital, it was too late. The child is now in a coma. Blake's face twisted in disbelief. "That's impossible. No way. My mother-in-law adores the child. She wouldn't let this happen." I nodded. "True. With Olivia around, the child would be cared for. But Olivia has her own problems now. Ever since Victoria was detained, Olivia fell ill and hasn't been able to get out of bed. She's currently hospitalized, with no one to look after her." The weight of these revelations left Blake utterly defeated. The man hunched over, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. The next day, the verdict came down. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for unlawfully entering someone else's property and, due to negligence or overconfidence, failing to take necessary precautions to prevent a death that he inadvertently caused. With all the evidence and witnesses in place, Blake did not appeal. The prime years of his life would be spent behind bars, and even after his release, he would carry the stain of his record. In a way, I felt I had avenged Grandma. After that, my life returned to a brief period of peace. But unexpectedly, a month later, Victoria came looking for me again. By then, I had already started my own business. Using the money from selling my house, I founded a tech company specializing in 5D animation, modeling a rare technology in this small city. At first, it was just me running the show, juggling everything from meeting clients, hiring staff, to designing projects. Most of the time, I ate and slept at the office, leaving no time to go home. Victoria showed up several times, but left empty-handed each time. Later, after I managed to hire a few employees, she somehow found out my company's address and came looking for me again. Unfortunately for her, the building's security was top-notch, and without a key card, she couldn't even get inside. Victoria had no choice but to wait at the entrance. One day, she brought a homemade lunchbox, and the next day, she came with fresh flowers. Each visit, she carried something different. The lunchbox contained dishes she had cooked herself. Standing at the front desk, she pleaded with the receptionist, "I don't need to go inside. Just please give this lunchbox to your boss. Is that okay?" The receptionist, already briefed on the situation, immediately shook her head and refused. "Sorry, I'm not allowed to accept items from outside," Victoria tried to reassure her. "This is food I made myself. It's not dirty." She carefully opened the lunchbox to show its contents: overcooked braised pork and eggplant stew. Some of it spilled during her rush to get there. Embarrassed, she wiped the box with her sleeve and pushed it toward the receptionist again. "Just let him see it," she begged. "He can eat it if he wants, or throw it away if he doesn't." The receptionist, a young woman fresh out of college, couldn't bring herself to refuse such a pitiful request. She eventually took the lunchbox and brought it upstairs during her lunch break. I had just finished a meeting when I saw the pink lunchbox sitting on my desk. Frowning, I asked, "Who brought this?" "The receptionist," my assistant said as she walked over. "What's wrong?" "Isn't it the takeout you ordered?" I shook my head. "I've been in meetings all morning. When would I have had time to order takeout?" Sensing something amiss, my assistant walked over, opened the lunchbox, and was momentarily speechless when she saw the food inside. "Who made this? It looks so unappetizing." I fell silent for a long moment before finally speaking. "Call the receptionist over." Noticing my dark expression, my assistant quickly went to fetch her. The receptionist entered nervously, her face pale. Before I could say anything, she was already on the verge of tears. "I'm so sorry, Mr. S," she stammered. "That lady looked so pitiful and kept begging me, so my assistant finally pieced things together. She had heard about a woman loitering downstairs in recent days. Office gossip had speculated that the woman had some connection to me. Now it seemed the rumors were true. Trying to remain professional, my assistant asked, "Mr. S, should I call security to escort her away?" I tapped my fingers on the desk, hesitated for a moment, then shook my head. "No need. Just leave her be." Turning back to the receptionist, I added firmly, "If this happens again, you'll be dismissed." "Understood," she replied, relief washing over her as she hurried away. My assistant lingered, watching my cold, stoic profile. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but hesitated. Finally, I broke the silence. "If you have a question, just ask." Summoning her courage, she asked, "Boss, is that your ex-girlfriend? She seems quite devoted." "She's not devoted," I replied indifferently. "She's just realized that life is easier when I'm around." Not fully understanding, she asked, "So, do you plan to reconcile with her?" I shook my head, walking over to the window. Looking down at the familiar figure pacing below, I spoke slowly and deliberately. "Belated affection is worth less than grass." With that, I picked up the lunchbox on my desk and tossed it into the trash. But Victoria didn't give up. When delivering food didn't work, she switched to flowers. She bought a massive quantity of fresh blooms and arranged them at the entrance to spell out 520, and "I love you," attracting a crowd of onlookers. People from the upper floors even began taking photos. From downstairs, I could hear her shouting, "Sincere, please give me another chance." Her voice carried through the glass, reaching me like an echo from the past. Suddenly, I was reminded of the time she had pursued me years ago. Back then, it was also a sea of flowers, a scene so extravagant it bordered on absurd. She stood amidst the blooms, her face radiant with a bouquet in hand, walking toward me step by step. "Sincere," she had said, her voice bright and clear. "I like you. Will you be with me? If you don't want to now, that's okay. I'll keep trying. One day I, Victoria, will win your heart." Back in school, everyone used to say she was like an unattainable flower, impossible to pursue. But in that moment, looking at the vibrant smile on her youthful face, I felt my heart stir. But now, because of that fleeting moment of infatuation, I gave my everything, only to lose it all in the end. Her feelings came too quickly, but they vanished just as fast. The intensity of love burned no one but me. Victoria came by every day for over 2 weeks, leaving early and returning late, trying everything she could think of. Yet no matter how hard she tried, she never managed to catch me waiting outside the office. She didn't know that the person she longed to see was sitting in the BMW that passed her by every day. Eventually, Victoria stopped coming. I instructed my lawyer to stop keeping tabs on her entirely. It was as if Victoria had completely disappeared from my life. 6 months later, I finally succeeded in my startup venture. Business was thriving, and I returned to Los Angeles for the first time to attend my friend Charlie's wedding. The moment Charlie saw me, his eyes lit up, and he rushed forward to give me a big hug. "Bro, you're finally back," he exclaimed, releasing me and taking a step back to size me up. "Mr. S, are you starting a second chapter in life or something? You look incredible." I chuckled. "Oh, come on. Today's your big day. No way I look better than you, the groom." "I'm serious," Charlie replied, gesturing toward a nearby mirror. "Take a look at yourself. I was worried divorce might drag you down, but it seems like it's given you a fresh start instead." Following his gesture, I glanced at the mirror. In it, I saw myself dressed in a sharp suit, my hair slicked back with confidence and brightness in my eyes. I looked like the man I once dreamed of becoming in my youth. This should have been my life all along. But back when I yearned for love the most, I met Victoria. I thought she was my soulmate. For her, I gave up my family, my job, and spent day and night revolving around her. In the end, I not only lost the love but also lost myself. Thankfully, I woke up in time and it wasn't too late to start over. Straightening my back and lifting my chin, I patted Charlie on the shoulder. "All right, it's your turn now. Go on in." Seated in my chair, I watched Charlie standing at the altar smiling. All eyes were on his bride as she walked slowly down the aisle to the sound of the wedding march. The lights illuminated them as they exchanged vows for a lifetime. "Do you take her to be your wife?" "I do." "Do you take him to be your husband?" "I do." A figure slipped into the seat beside me. Turning my head, I was stunned to see Victoria. Charlie wouldn't have invited her. She must have come uninvited. I regarded her with a cold stare. "Mr. S., please don't look at me like that," she said softly. She looked thinner than before, her face sunken and her whole demeanor dimmed. Her eyes glistened with tears and regret. This time she didn't say anything arrogant or self-righteous. Instead, with genuine sincerity, she said, "Mr. S., leaving me has made you better." I didn't respond, merely turned my gaze back to the altar. Victoria didn't say anything more either. She just sat quietly beside me. When the wedding ended, Victoria downed a glass of wine before turning to me. "Can we talk one last time?" she asked. I refused. "I don't think we have anything left to talk about." As I noticed the guests beginning to leave, I stood to go as well. Suddenly, Victoria grabbed my hand. Her voice trembled with desperation. "Please," she pleaded, "just one last time." Tears shimmered in her eyes. Those eyes, once so alluring, now seemed dull and lifeless. I hesitated for a moment before finally saying, "Fine, follow me." Victoria's eyes brightened instantly. "I just need to say goodbye to Charlie first," I added, walking over to my friend. Charlie had clearly noticed Victoria as well and frowned. "What's she doing here? I didn't invite her." "I know," I replied. "I just wanted to let you know I'm heading out." Charlie's eyes widened in alarm. "You're not thinking about getting back together with her, are you?" "I'm telling you, I won't stand for it." I laughed. "Do I look like the kind of guy who goes back to old flames?" Charlie shook his head firmly. "Exactly," I said. "I just want to clear things up with her." "All right, if you need anything, just let me know," Charlie said earnestly. I patted him on the shoulder and glanced at his bride waiting for him not far away. "Congratulations, man. Be happy. Don't end up like me." With that, I turned and walked back to Victoria. She was still waiting expectantly. I led her to a coffee shop across the street, and we sat by the window. Victoria looked around the place, her face filled with melancholy. She let out a self-deprecating laugh. "This is where I confessed to you back then," she said. Back then, she had worn her heart on her sleeve, laying her passionate love bare for me to see. It had finally moved me, but once we were together, it was me who gave the most. Victoria's voice trembled as she asked, "Mr. S., is there really no chance for us anymore?" She clenched her fingers tightly around her coffee cup, her lips trembling. "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have listened to my mom and tricked you into a fake divorce. I shouldn't have married Blake." Her gaze burned with intensity, reminiscent of the way she looked at me back then. At that time, we were young and fearless. She thought she could love me for a lifetime, but in the end, it was she who broke that promise. The man sitting across from her now was too good. So good that she had thought even a small misstep wouldn't matter. He might have forgiven her, but what she didn't expect was that I had been through too much, and my state of mind was completely different from back then. I looked at her calmly and said, "It's over between us. Some things, once done, can never be undone, no matter the reason. It's like this coffee shop, its owner has changed, and so has the taste of the coffee. We can never go back." Victoria's face turned pale once again. She left in despair and never appeared in front of me again. I stayed in New York for a few days and explored the city with Charlie, only to learn some things I hadn't known before. Olivia had been hospitalized for a few days before passing away. Throughout the entire ordeal, Victoria never showed up. The police tried to locate her but found out she had quit her job, had no fixed address, and was nowhere to be found. Her mother's body remained unclaimed after her death and was sent directly to the crematorium by the hospital. To this, all I could say was that karma had played its role. Because of business commitments, I stayed in New York for a few days before returning to work. Within a year, I had opened 2 more branch offices. During this time, I also began going on blind dates. Some girls were sweet and gentle, while others were passionate and lively. Every girl I met was wonderful. It was only after leaving Victoria that I realized there were so many amazing women in the world. 1 year later, on my birthday, I was heading home after finishing a blind date when I received a call from an unknown number. I answered, but there was only silence on the other end. Yet I knew exactly who it was. At the stroke of midnight, a hoarse voice from the other side finally whispered, "Happy birthday," and then quickly hung up. After that, she never contacted me again. One day, while on a business trip to New York, I had dinner with Charlie. Suddenly, he hesitantly asked, "Sincere, do you still have feelings for your ex-wife?" I was taken aback for a moment before chuckling and saying, "Why? Are you trying to play mediator for someone?" Over the years, my career had flourished. Despite being introduced to countless potential matches, my love life remained stagnant. This had left my parents so worried that they'd even developed a few gray hairs. Believing I was too heartbroken by Victoria to move on, they often nudged Charlie to pry into my feelings indirectly. But this time, it wasn't my parents who had put him up to it. Charlie furrowed his brows and asked awkwardly, "Just tell me, do you still have feelings or not?" I shook my head with a smile and replied, "None. From the day she married someone else, there was nothing left." Charlie let out a relieved sigh and patted his chest. "Good, that's a relief. Now I can tell you about something." Curious, I asked, "What's so mysterious that even you are being so secretive?" Leaning closer, Charlie said, "Victoria is dead." I froze. "Dead? How?" Charlie closely observed my expression. Seeing that I was merely stunned and not visibly saddened, he finally relaxed. "Stomach cancer," he said. "Apparently she already had it when she attended your wedding. She had sneaked out of the hospital that day to attend, and after the event she went straight back for treatment. A friend of mine works at the hospital and told me that she initially had the money for chemotherapy, but later, when she ran out of funds, she didn't borrow any. She just got some medication and checked herself out. On your birthday, she couldn't endure it any longer and passed away. Her mom was already gone, and her relatives didn't want anything to do with them, but before she died, she arranged for a funeral home to cremate her remains with what little money she had left. That call on my birthday turned out to be Victoria's final one. For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up inside me. We had known each other for 7 years and were married for 4. Even though I no longer loved her, her death felt like losing someone familiar. All the love and resentment between us had dissipated with her passing. I could only hope we would never meet again in the next life. After learning about her death, I went to the hospital to ask about the child. The child had already recovered. Despite her flaws, Victoria had been a responsible mother to the girl. While she had been reckless with money during our time together, she had used the rest of her savings to pay for the child's medical treatment. After Victoria passed, the child, now an orphan, was sent to a local orphanage. I visited the orphanage and met the little girl. She was an adorable child. When I handed her a bag of potato chips, she looked at me with innocent eyes and asked, "Uncle, do you know my mom? When will she come to get me?" She was too young to understand that her mother would never come back. I knelt down, patted her head, and said, "How about Uncle takes you to meet your new mommy and daddy?" I had arranged for one of my business partners, a foreign couple who had always longed for a child, to adopt her. After meeting the little girl, they were delighted and immediately filed for adoption with the orphanage. The process was approved quickly. When signing the paperwork, I specifically requested that the adoptive parents' contact information and address remain confidential. After finalizing everything, the couple flew back to their home country with the child. Later, as I stood atop the city, gazing down at the place that had brought me both joy and pain, I realized I could no longer remember the places Victoria and I had been to together. In my memory, we had talked about traveling the world once we had the money. But in the end, the only part of the world we ever saw together was a small corner of this city. The rest of the world I walked alone. Somewhere in the distance it seemed as if a familiar figure passed by, but the wind was too strong up here. It lashed against my face, stinging my eyes. Before I could clearly see the figure downstairs, my assistant arrived. "Mr. S., it's freezing up here on the rooftop. Please go back inside," she said, her words flowing in an endless stream. "Mr. S., you must take care of your health. Without you, how would we ever get to enjoy your cooking? Without that, we'd lose all our motivation to work." She was clearly joking. I had only cooked a few times during company retreats, but it had been enough to earn thunderous applause from the staff. "You're such a sweet talker," I teased her with a smile. "You're wasting your talent as my assistant. You should really be in the sales department." I laughed and playfully scolded her, but suddenly, memories of the past surfaced, memories of when I had once prepared an entire meal for Victoria. She had picked at the food, criticizing this and that, saying none of it suited her taste. At the time, I thought my cooking skills just weren't good enough, so I went out and bought countless cookbooks. I meticulously experimented with recipes, learning both Western and Asian cuisines. Yet despite all my efforts, Victoria never once gave me a genuine compliment. The best I ever got was a half-hearted, "It's okay." I smiled faintly and told my assistant, "You really know how to make people happy. No one's ever praised my cooking before." She immediately retorted, "Then they just didn't know how to appreciate it, Mr. S. Your cooking is as good as any top chef's out there." My gaze flickered for a moment. "Victoria, can you hear this from wherever you are now? You were the one who didn't know how to appreciate what you had." Years later, I remarried. My new wife was none other than that very assistant. Over time, our bond grew stronger. She was capable, gentle, and most importantly, she valued and appreciated me. She saw the best in me. After we got married, she soon became pregnant. Even then, I didn't push her to stay at home as a full-time housewife. I believed in her worth and wanted us to grow together, rather than turning her into a caged bird trapped in a gilded cage. Then, Blake was released from prison. After serving a 7-year sentence, the first thing he did upon his release was reach out through others to try and arrange a meeting with me. I didn't meet him in person. Instead, I made a single phone call to him. "I want to," he began. Before he could finish, I cut him off. "I know, you want to find your child, but I won't tell you where they are. You caused me the pain of losing my grandma, and now you'll pay for it tenfold. I'll make sure you and your child never meet. You're a bastard." Blake shouted back in rage, "I'll kill you." But his anger no longer held any power over me. After all, the person I am now is someone far beyond Blake's reach. I replied calmly, "If you're not afraid of going back to prison, then go ahead and try. But I'll tell you this, you have no reason to worry about your child. She's living a good life. However, you'll never see her again. As for Victoria, she's gone. She's dead." With that, I ended the call. My wife, who had been quietly sitting beside me the entire time, couldn't help but ask, "Why did you say that? You sent the child away to give her a better life." I glanced at her and said, "Blake isn't a good father. If he finds her, that child will only suffer. No matter what grudges exist between adults, children are innocent." I looked into the distance and added, "As for the hatred, let it end with our generation." From that moment, I severed all ties with the past. The evening was drawing late, the breeze was gentle, and everything was moving toward a brighter future.